Are you ready? Let's do this.
Hi, family. Welcome back once again. Another very special Sunday that we're having here. I just wanted to thank everybody again for joining us, for taking time out of your busy schedule to hear these stories, to hear these episodes of these great warriors of our children that have fought and are currently fighting this thing called childhood cancer. It's an honor for me to be doing this and doing what I'm doing. And thank you all for your response to this. I thank you for all the messages, all the phone calls, and for taking the time again to listening to all these great stories. So this is the first story that we're going to be featuring here in the month of September, which is very dear to us parents that are here because it's Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. And I preach and I'm going to preach until something changes. That 4% is not enough for our children, that they deserved, and they deserve a whole lot more. So, Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, we need to go gold for the month of September, no matter where you're at in the world. Let's talk to our community, let's talk to our city, let's even talk to our state, see what we can do about, turning gold wherever we may go. So, once again, thank you very much. Again, like every week, every story is special. This is another very, very special story. A beautiful little girl that reminds me so much of Mia. There's actually, I was talking to the parents here off camera, and there's two little girls that would remind me a lot of Mia. Another little girl, Aria, who's in heaven now from San Antonio, and little Bella. When I came across her story, and I started following both her parents and started, from when she was fighting, this little girl just touched my heart. And she's a very special little girl, still is, still changing lives, and God is still using her testimony and her parents' testimony to reach a lot of people. So again, I don't want to talk much. I don't want to ruin the story. I want to read for this story to be told firsthand. So once again, I have the pleasure and the honor of speaking to Betsy. Betsy is joining us today all the way from Laredo or Laredo, however you want to say it. But her husband Ray couldn't join us. But Ray and Betsy are a couple that I've known already for quite a while, that I've had communication with through Facebook and through some support groups. So we're going to hear the beautiful, touching warrior story of Bella and what everything that she went through and what her parents are actually doing right now to spread awareness and to be a voice for our children, because now more than ever we need to be that voice. We see what this world is going through, we see what this world is and where this world is headed. So we need to make a difference, and we need to speak about our children, and we need to bring awareness. So once again, Betsy, I just wanted to thank you personally. It's finally nice to meet you, even though it is through here. And again, I followed Bella's story. Beautiful warrior, beautiful lady girl. And what you all are doing right now is inspiring me so much. There is days that I'm weak, and when I look at everything that you all are doing, and sometimes I even question what I'm doing here with this channel, but when I see your strength and everything that you all are doing, it gives me strength. So Betsy, thank you so much. We can't wait to hear your warrior story. Welcome to the Gold Corner, and the floor is yours. Tell us your
Thank,
warrior story.
thank you so much, Will, for having me here. It's an honor. Thank you on behalf of all the parents that have spoken through this site. Thank you so much that you're taking the time to do this and speak to parents. We could share our little ones' story and journey, and like you said, it's a way of spreading awareness, childhood cancer awareness, because it is very important. But yes, thank you so much. So, and I'll try not to cry. But I'll start from the very beginning, just to try not to make it so long, but just share Bella's, my daughter's story and how everything went with our journey. So Bella, or little BellaBoo, how we would call her, she was 7 months old when she was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia. Uh, We actually we weren't aware. We never, as a parent, you never think that this is gonna happen to you, right? Um, Bella had been sick for about a month. I actually had taken her to her pediatrician to do her vaccines, her 6-month vaccines, and unfortunately they couldn't do it because she was sick. Uh, they started her with antibiotics and medicine, and started giving her for her little cough and her mucus and all that stuff. But it wouldn't go away. From there, I kept taking her every week, and nothing. But she was still being her mm, normal self, that spontaneous little girl. Even at 6 months old, she was always smiling and happy and wanting to play, and just full of energy and full of life. Uh, like I mentioned, I had been taking her to her doctor, and I remember one week it was gonna be the whole back to school and meet the teachers, boys. Bella was her little baby girl. She was the baby of the house. So boys were already going to school. We had that week. We had meet the teachers for the boys, and Bella was already going to daycare. So when I took her into daycare, it was on a Wednesday. When I went to pick her up, her teachers were telling me how Bella was just not being herself. Like I said, even though she was 6 months, 7 months, she was always super energetic and super full of life and just wanting to play. Her food was her main thing. Um, so they noticed those changes on her, and they told me, you know what, Miss Sanchez, Bella's not eating well. She's not being herself. We feel like she maybe if you could take her to the doctor again, because she's not getting any better. The thing is, she wasn't getting any fevers. It was just that really bad cough, and just a lot of mucus, and the cough was getting really bad to the point where she couldn't breathe as well. So I said, you know what, I am gonna take her this Friday. That was on a Wednesday. I said, I will take her this Friday, since it was already gonna be meet the teacher, and I didn't want to ask for 2 days at work. So I said, you know what, I just might as well do everything that day. I That was on a Wednesday. On Thursday, a Wednesday night, when I brought her back home from daycare, I remember I was here and I tried her. She was still on formula. I tried feeding her, and she didn't want to eat. She didn't want to drink her bottle. She didn't want to eat her Gerber, nothing. She just wanted to be asleep and just here with mommy. And so when my husband, he came from work that night, and I mentioned it to him, and I told him, you know what, Bella's not eating. I don't think this is normal. She never misses her formula, her schedule on eating her formula and her Gerber, and it was just really, really off that she wasn't eating. I told him, you know what, maybe if you could, the following day he was gonna work late, till later, not so early in the morning. So I told him, you know what, since you work till later, can you take her to the doctor, right? I'll leave everything ready for you, and just make sure you take her in, because I don't want to wait till Friday. And so sure enough, that's what we did. The following morning, I woke up, left everything ready for him, and not even I when back then on the job that I was in, I would work. I would go in at 8 in the morning. So by 7:45, I was already at work. And I remember that morning, I was already at work, not even 5 minutes in, and that day was a busy day. We had so many patients that day. So I usually would always have my phone with me on my desk, and just have it there, in case of an emergency. I do have boys at school, and at that moment they were at daycare. And so I was there 5 minutes into work, my phone going off that day. Like, since it was really busy that day, I put my phone away, and I was like, I'm not gonna let my phone don't distract me. And but all of a sudden, my husband Ray, he gets to, and he's like, and that was really weird. I'm like, he never comes to work. If anything, he'll call me or he'll text me. But like, I had put my phone away. I wasn't aware that he was calling me, and so they called me from the husband's here, him in, and he's like, I need to go pick up Bella from daycare. I just dropped her off, but they keep calling me. So I go and check my phone. Just something, that mom, I don't know if it's a mom intuition or what it is, but I just felt it in my gut that something was wrong. So I went to get my phone, and sure enough, I had a whole bunch of missed calls. I have my sister, my younger sister, she had her daughter in that same daycare as well. So when I saw her text, my heart sank. She was like, Betsy, you need to come get Bella right now. She does not look well. She can't breathe. Those were her words. So I was like, what's going on? When I left in the morning, I thought she was fine. She seemed just asleep, and that she was fine. Sure enough, we go get the doctor that I was working. She was like, Betsy, don't worry about it. And I was like, but we have so many patients. Like, don't worry about the patients. We'll figure it out. You go and go get your daughter. So we went straight to the daycare. And I remember my husband saying, so I drive to the doctor. I'm like, you know what? Let's just go to the ER, to our local emergency room. And I'm like, let's just go straight to the ER. She doesn't look well. When I picked her up, she just looked completely pale, no color. I was like, okay, this is not just a regular, a cough and a cold, a common cold. This is not that. So we ended up taking her to the ER here, and not even, everything happened so fast, not even 5 minutes. It was early in the morning, so there was no one. And they walked in, did some labs. I remember doctor requested more labs, and not even waited for the other labs that he had requested. We were in the room with her when a meeting of doctors and nurses walk in. At that point, my heart was going 1,000 miles per hour. Okay, normally a whole bunch of doctors walking into the room, that something is what I do. I've been doing it for 20 years, more than 20 years, and the patients that I work with are patients that are dying. Those were his words. At that point, I was like, what do you mean? What's wrong with my daughter? He's like, I cannot diagnose her since I'm not a specialist, but we have to fly her over to San Antonio. And I was like, okay, when? He's like, right now. We're already doing all the paperwork. You guys go home, get close. I don't know how long you guys are going to be over there, but we're sending you over with a oncologist, because it looks like she has leukemia. At that point, when we heard those words, just my world turned upside down. I remember my husband just grabbing his phone, and his first phone call was to our pastor. At that moment, a lot of things go through your mind, and you just hear the word cancer. For us, like any other parent out there, yes, you see the commercials, the St. Jude's commercials and commercials of little kids and all this radiothons that they do, and you hear the stories, but you never think it's gonna happen to you. Never. So when we heard the word cancer, and we thought, that's it, there's nothing we could do. My husband right away calls our pastor, and I remember just crying. And I didn't know what to do. You're clueless, you're clueless. So I remember he said, go get clothes. We don't know how long you guys are going to be over there. We drove home. It was like it's still gonna be a little bit of time while we get the helicopter to get here to fly her over. Just go get clothes, and one of you will be able to go with her. We get back to the emergency room. There, by the time we get back, they already had her strapped in her what is it called, her the bed, to put her into the helicopter. Unfortunately, we couldn't go with her because the helicopter that she was going to go in it was having some issues, so they had to call a smaller one, and only she fit, and the nurse that had to go with her. So they flew her over to Methodist Children's Hospital in San Antonio, Texas, and we had to drive up those 3 hours. Those 3 hours were the longest hours of our lives. You know, a lot of things go through your mind. What if by the time we get there, you know, she's not here anymore with us? You know, a lot of things. Praying that it would be something else. That we would get there and they would tell us that, you know what, it's this, it's that. But we get there. I remember driving over there. Luckily I have my baby sister. She lives in San Antonio, so I called her right away and I told her, you know what, we still have to drive up over there. It's gonna be a while till we get there. Can you please go to the hospital and be there with Bella? And sure enough, she said, of course. She drove to Methodist and she called me. She FaceTimed me, actually, because we had to give consents for a blood transfusion. She needed a blood transfusion right away. I remember her hemoglobin being at 2. At 2, the doctors told us if you would have taken, you know, a little bit longer to bring her in, God knows what would have happened. But we got there 3 hours later, and we're there in the room with her, waiting for the doctors to get there to give us, you know, something, right? Hope, still praying and hoping that it wasn't that. We're there, and a doctor walks in, and he's like, I could see it in his face already. I mean, my baby, my 7-month-old, he walks in and he tells us, you know, we did the labs, we ran more tests, and it all shows to her having, you know, acute lymphoblastic leukemia. It just confirmed what we were so afraid of. At that moment, you know, I was still crying nonstop, but I just, once he, you know, they bombard you with all this information and your mind is just going crazy trying to grasp everything that's going on, and me trying to focus on what he was saying, talking about study trials and talking about the protocols and talking about, you know, all this stuff that they give you. At that moment, I remember once he stepped out, I started praying. I go to the corner and I start praying, and I feel this peace, you know, this peace in me. And I say, you know, God, it's in your hands. She will be fine. She is your daughter, you know. You will do what you have to do. And at that moment, at that point, I left it in God's hands. I left her in his hands because she is a daughter of God. So we go into, right away the following morning, she goes into surgery for her replacement and start chemotherapy right away. Fast forward to 9 months, we were inpatient in San Antonio, Texas, away from our boys at home. Of course, Dad had to come back to work. Bills don't stop. We all know this, right? I had to stay in the hospital with my daughter, and every time doctors would tell us, you know, she's gonna have this chemotherapy, it's gonna bring her down, she's not gonna want to do anything, she's gonna be in her room, and they explain to you all the side effects, correct? But Bella would always surprise them. Bella was such a fierce little girl. She fought the hardest. She every time, like I said, every time they would say something like that, it was they would come back and then we'd be like, it's like we're giving water to this little girl. She would always be up and running. Like I said, full of life and always in the oncology unit, just running around and walking. And well, at that point she wasn't walking, but she started actually. We actually took a walker, so she would start roaming the halls in her walker and wanting to be with the nurses and nurses station and just out of her room. She never really wanted to be in her room, and we tried as much, to keep her comfortable, and since that was her norm, that's all she knew as a little girl. We try to make her life in the hospital as fun and as normal as possible. I know a child should not be, in a hospital going through that, but we tried our best to make it a good memory for her. 9 months later, we come home. She rang her bell. She was done with her inpatient treatment. We were going into the maintenance part of it. She actually went into remission on her second cycle of chemotherapy. Not her second cycle, her second phase of the protocol. She went into remission and she stayed in remission all the way through. Like I said, we came home because she was already in the maintenance part, just gonna be doing chemotherapy for the time remaining. But we would be going to Methodist, to the clinic every week, just for labs and just making sure that everything was fine. When we came home, our family was complete. It was amazing to have her home finally. She was able to, go to the parks and be a child, make memories with her brothers, make memories as a whole, as a family. It was amazing to have her home for that little time. And I say little because after 4 months of being home with weekly visits to the clinic, one day we take her in and she needed a blood transfusion. It was so weird that every time we would take her in, she needed a blood transfusion. So I remember telling the doctor, you know what, you told me that in the maintenance part, she wouldn't need as much transfusions because the chemotherapy that she was getting wasn't as harsh. It wouldn't, her counts wouldn't go that low and all this stuff. And she's like, maybe it's just, I remember she started again with like a cold, and one day we take her in, and as they're accessing her port, they're putting the saline, and she starts screaming, crying, screaming, which was never her. Of course, she would get scared every time it was time to access ports as any other children. And unfortunately for her, the lidocaine, the numbing cream, she would get a reaction to it, so she wouldn't use a cream. So even harder, would break my heart every time we had to hold her down. And I'm sure you remember of all these things and all these other parents that are going through it or have been through it. We know how hard it is to see our children, so scared and terrified of that access. But she starts crying, and it was just weird because she wouldn't cry through that process. And they start the transfusion, and she was fine. I thought, maybe she's sleepy, she didn't sleep well last night, she's hungry, it's early in the morning. And I remember walking out of the room at the clinic and going to get her some cereal and some juices they had there in the kitchen. And I come back and she's with dad coloring, and, dad trying to keep her calm. And she, every once in a while, she would go like, owie, like that was her word. When she wouldn't speak much, she wouldn't say a lot of words, but when she would, we knew what she was saying. So that time I remember her saying owie, owie, and she would just kind of, go like this. And I was like, what's wrong? And then she would start crying, and we would try to keep her entertained with coloring. And then she just starts crying, and I tell, as parents, you just know that something is not right. And I remember my husband telling me, you know what, just call the nurses. Maybe, maybe her the access isn't right, or, it's something's bothering her. So I did. I opened the door and I looked for the nurses, and sure enough, a nurse comes by, and I tell her, she's just crying, and this is not her, not during a blood transfusion. It's just at the beginning of the at the the accessing where she cries, and then she gets over it right away with bubbles or whatever. And that time she was just constantly crying and saying owie, and something was wrong. So I remember doctors walk in and they tell us, take off her shirt. We take it off, and my husband right away notices a lump around here, and he's like, she has something here. This wasn't here. And we're like, yeah, that wasn't there. So they tell us after a while, I guess they go and discuss, and they come back and they tell us, you know what, maybe it's her port. Maybe she outgrew it, or it broke through the inside, but we won't know until we get some x-rays. So that day she had already eaten. So they told us we're gonna have to admit her so she could do the x-rays for tomorrow morning. So that's what we did. They admitted her. And the following morning, I remember they did the x-rays, and sure enough, it was the port had through the inside, it had broken. So they told us she's gonna need surgery to fix that. And then we're like, okay, we'll do surgery to fix it and all this stuff. And then I remember one of her doctors said, you know what, since she's already gonna be down, under, let me just go and do a biopsy, a bone marrow biopsy, just to be on the safe side, just to make sure why her counts are going so low every single week that you guys come and check. Just, I don't want to say it's a relapse, but let's just get it out of the way since we're already here. We said, okay, let's do it. The following morning, it was a Friday, she went into surgery. We go back into the room, and I remember it was actually September. So that September, it's, go gold. And we, another local organization here in Laredo was having events every weekend to, spread awareness. So I remember I said, I don't want to be in the hospital. Like, are we going to be able to go home after surgery? What's going to happen? And the doctor was like, you know what, if the surgeon says she's okay to go, then we'll let you guys go home. Since I won't, she said, since I won't have the results until Monday morning, her biopsy results. So I was like, okay, that sounds good. I didn't want to be, after 9 long months, you don't want to see the hospital anymore. We were there, and that she said that Friday after surgery. And then she walks in. It was around 6 p.m. and you have all these details memorized in your head, right? Every single detail that happens through your kid's journey, your child's journey, you have it memorized in your head. So I remember it was around 6 p.m. and the doctor walks in, and I was like, oh yes, they're probably going to tell us that we can go home. And she walks in, and I see her face, and I'm like, oh goodness. I was like, we're probably gonna have to stay. The surgeon said no for us to stay, you know. Never in a never did I think it was gonna be a relapse. She comes in and she tells us, with her face, she had already told us, but she comes in and she's like, I'm sorry, Mom. I'm sorry, Dad. But it is confirmed it is a relapse. And I said, what? I don't know. At that moment, it was always a nightmare of mine, you know, because it's always in the back of your head. Even though, you know, you go through your journey and you try to stay as positive and as faithful as possible, it's always in the back of your head. What if she relapses? What if this happens? What if? Always a what ifs. And at that moment, I just said, again, you know what, I started crying. I think it hurt more than the first time for me. Like, I could honestly say, for me, it hurt me a lot more than when they first told me. First told us. I was thinking, what's next? What's after this? And she said, we're gonna have to get with the team and see what's gonna happen. Again, bombarding us with all this information and telling us everything that that's gonna happen and what we're gonna do. Of course, at this point, they told us she is gonna need a transplant, a bone marrow transplant. But she was like, we'll get to that conversation once we finish the whole oncology, the chemotherapy and all that part. She right away, again, the following day, she started chemotherapy, and they gave us another study trial. They told us this is a study trial that she's going to start with chemotherapy, and then she starts with chemotherapy, and then they were going to put her like in a random to see if she was going to get more chemotherapy or an immunotherapy. I can't recall the name of it. We would call it Blina. It's an immunotherapy. So they told us that Blina was a 28-day infused therapy, but that it doesn't immunosuppress her. So it is strong as into killing, cancer cells, but it just only attacks the cancer cells. It doesn't attack the good cells. So it isn't as bad as, chemotherapy. And we research, as parents, you research all this stuff, right? So we read about it, we went into it, and we prayed for it. And we said, God, if it's your will, if it's for her, she's going to go into that. But the thing is that not every child gets it. They just randomly pick a child and see if they get it. If she doesn't get it, then she'll go into another call. So we wanted that for her. We said she's already been through so much. At such a very age, 7 months old, she started with this intensive chemotherapies. We didn't want to see her, because throughout her 9 months, as most of the time she was good, she had her bad days. And we said, we don't want to put her through that anymore. So we prayed for that immunotherapy. And I remember it was going to take about a week to know. And they come back and they tell us, you know what? She did get this one. She's going to get it. And we said, thank you, God. Praise God for this, what we wanted. She starts right away, a 28-day infusion. And I was like, oh my goodness, 28 days, anything for my daughter. With her again, she's fine. I remember she finished her 28 days, and they gave us a break about we came home for we came home for it was gonna be, I believe it was gonna be New Year's. We came home and it was amazing, just that small little break that we had here at home. Finally she was able to spend a holiday at home, because all her little life, she, birthdays, holidays, Christmas, every special occasion, she spent it at the hospital. So I was glad she was able to spend New Year's with us here at home. And I think it was 2 days after New Year's, we went back to start the second cycle, because it was going to be 2 cycles of 28 days. We start the second cycle, and she was doing good. That, like, it's an immunotherapy, they don't go down as much. She was being her normal self, up and running, all this energy, that fierce, brave little girl she was, dancing and all these amazing things she was doing. And on day 12, I noticed a little, like it looked like a rash in her head. She was already bald. She little bald head. She had like a rash in her head, and I was like, that doesn't look right. But I thought, maybe they can give her a cream and it'll go away. So I mentioned it to the doctor, and I told her what she had in her head, and she seemed concerned, but she didn't say anything. She just said, you know what, I'm just going to mention it to the team, and we're probably going to send a dermatologist just to check on it and see what we can give her. And they did that. They right away, I think it was like a week later, the dermatologist comes in and she looks at it. And I remember her saying, you know what, Mom, I did not come prepared. I didn't think it was going to be that, but I'm going to have to do a biopsy of it. I'm going to have to take a little piece of it. And, because of her history, because she's going, fighting this, I just want to make sure it's not anything else. And I remember, oh my goodness, I remember I was there and I was like, okay, well, how are you going to do it? She's like, we're going to have to do it at bedside. And I was like, without, numbing, without sleeping her. And she's like, no, Mom, we're going to have to do it like that. And I remember her asking the nurses for scalpels and all this stuff. And I was like, wait, what? Like, what are we doing? And she's like, it's okay if you don't want to be inside the room. It's really hard to watch this, this process that we're going to do. But I was like, I'm not going to leave my daughter alone on this, by herself. I want to stay. And I remember they had to put her down, kind of face down, but not completely flat, just kind of kneeled. So I remember grabbing her little hands and looking at her, and she was looking at me with this eyes and this scare in her face, like telling me, Mom, just telling me, Mommy, why are you letting them do this to me? She didn't talk much, so she couldn't say a lot of words, but just her facial expression, I knew she was just, like, what are they doing? I calmed her down and I'm singing to her and just telling her, you know what, baby, it's going to be okay. You're going to be fine. It's going to be fast and everything's going to be okay. You are strong and you are brave. And she just looked at me like she trusted me. She was, yes, she was a little girl, but she knew what I was saying. When I told her those words, I could see it in her face where she calmed down and she just looked at me and trusted me that everything was going to be fine. And I remember them cutting, and I just remember seeing a whole bunch of blood, because obviously they had to cut and take pieces of it. And it was really, really, really hard witnessing and being part of that. And I remember she just started crying, and me just holding her and trying to keep her calm, and it went so fast. The doctors there, the nurses, everyone at Method is super amazing. You know, amazing staff, amazing nurses and doctors. Everything happened so fast, and what seemed that it was going to take forever, it actually went pretty fast, and they did that. And then I forgot to mention that they also did a biopsy in her leg, because she had, not only did she have that spot, but then when the dermatologist got there, she noticed two more spots here, and they look like tiny mosquito bites right here, two, and two in her leg. So they did one biopsy in her head and one of the ones she had on her leg. And they did that. They sent them off. They left, and can't recall how long after that they come back and they tell us it is leukemia. It's spread to her skin. And again, you know, you think and you say, okay, what's next? What next? At that point, we had to stop the treatment she was in. They stopped the blino because obviously it wasn't working anymore. They stopped that, and they come again and they tell me, you know, we have this other study trial, and they gave me like three options. Two of them were study trials, and one was you know, like this protocol where it had strong, intensive, you know, super strong chemotherapy. And the doctor did mention to me, and she was like, you know what, Betsy, this chemotherapy, if you do go with this one, it's going to be really hard on her body because she is little. But that's what we have, you know, two study trials and that third one that they gave me. At that point, I was like, you know what, I'm done with study trials. I know I had said yes at the beginning because, you know, you go into this, or as for me, as we go into the study trials, you know, because it could help other children in the long run. You know, they take samples and they take all this information and all this data on my daughter to be able to help other children. But at that point, I was like, I'm done experimenting on my daughter. I'm done with that. Give me something that is gonna work. And they told me, you know, okay, we could go with this one. It has had some success rates, and the only thing is that it's gonna be really hard on her body. And I said, you know what, I just, again, reaching out to God and saying, it is your will. I'll leave it in your hands. You guide me, you guide these doctors, guide us as her parents, because we are their boys. They can't say much. So I said, just guide me. And we went with that chemotherapy, that strong chemotherapy. I said, you know, they've told me this before, where they say it's going to be her Bella in the hallway, you know, being Bella. So we went with that, and it started with the chemo. She was doing really good, and then I don't remember how many days into the chemotherapy, I think she was done with it. It was the recovery time where she started having some complications. She ended up going to the PQ, to the PEDS ICU, because her heart rate and her breathing, a lot of issues that she had with that chemotherapy. She made it out of it, you know, she made it out. She was doing really good, or we thought so, right? At that point, they had already swabbed her. Her brothers weren't a match, because we were trying to get her to remission and have her MRD at 0% so she could go into transplant. So at this point, they had already been looking for matches. They had already swapped her and her brothers. Unfortunately, her brothers were only both of them were only half match. So that's when they started to look into the registry. Luckily, they did find 5 perfect matches. Um, so we ended up, we said we were gonna go with the cord blood, you know, transplant, because she was a baby, and then I believe the other matches were adults, and 2 of them didn't respond or something like that. So at this point, we're already in the process of getting her to remission to start transplant. Once she's out of ICU, she starts recovering, and then they do a biopsy and LP again, and the biopsy to check her MRD. And this is where they tell us this was already February, I think it was February 24th of 2019. That's when they tell us, they come back, and you get so close to the doctors, they become family. So you already have this, this connection with them. So you can already know their facial expressions. And one of her doctors, he comes in, and we were actually in the playroom. And Bella loved being in the playroom. So we're there, and he walks in, and he's like, "Mom, you want to go to the room?" And I was like, "Whatever you have to tell me, just tell me right here." And he's like, "I'm sorry, but she's not in remission. Her MRD came back, and she's at 0.05%. And I remember seeing his face, and he got teary eyes, and he said, "We were so close. We were so close. I'm sorry, Mom." They started apologizing, and I said, "It is not your fault. I know you guys are doing everything in your power, to find a cure for her." At that point, he's like, "We're going to sit with the team. We're going to sit down with you guys. But there's nothing more we could do for her here at Methodist." He's like, again, I said, "So what's next? What do we do now?" And he said, "My recommendation is go home, enjoy the time you have with her. And in the meantime, we will start reaching out to other hospitals to see if they have anything." I said, "Okay, we'll do that," right? I called my husband. Of course, as much as he wished he could be there for all of this, he had to work. So I called him. I gave him the news over the phone, which is really hard to do. I tell him, and he's like, "What do we do?" And I said, "You know what? Let's just go home and see what they find for her. I trust these doctors, and I know that they'll look for something for the best for her." We did. We came home. I remember we came home, and it was cold, and it was February, and here in Laredo, every year they have this super random, but they have this celebration, the George Washington's birthday celebration. So they have they have events going on throughout the month of February. And I remember the carnival was here in Laredo, and since we were already home, we decided to take her. Most of her life was in the hospital. She never got to experience things a child should experience, So we go to the carnival. She had the best time of her life. It was cold, but it was so much fun. She found a fish. Someone had left a fish in the parking lot, those little fishes that you win in the carnival. Someone had left it there in the little Ziploc bag, and I remember her pointing to it, and she's like, "Fish, fish," and I'm like, "Okay, just leave it there. It's fine." And she's like, terca, she wanted to take it, and I was like, "Okay, let's just take it." And my little one was really close to her, so he seconds that, and he's like, "Yes, let's take it," and he grabs it, and they're all excited because they got a fish. So we come home and we're here. And I remember doctors call me and they're like, "Okay, so we reached out to St. Jude's. They reached out to MD Anderson in Houston, Texas. And they said, I don't know for what reason, I can't remember, but St. Jude's was a no. They didn't take her in, which I was really disappointed because, you think that they get every child, but that's another story. So we ended up saying, okay, let's go to MD Anderson in Houston. It's, closer to home. It's still in Texas. And we started doing all the process to go over there. Unfortunately, for insurance purposes, we couldn't go there. So then they reached out to Texas Children's in Houston, Texas. And the thing is that they started reaching out because they had already told us in Methodist, we don't have anything else for her. We're already given her everything possible that she could have, every single chemotherapy that she could have, and nothing is working. So there's nothing we could do for her here. But then when we had sat down with them before coming home in February, we mentioned we had heard about CAR-T therapy treatment, and we know that it's not a treatment that affects them as much as chemotherapy. So when we mentioned it to the doctors and to the transplant doctor, they looked at me and they said, okay, I mean, it sounds like if that's what you want, we could do it. We can reach out to these hospitals and see who has it and who can take her in. Because at Methodist they didn't have that. They don't have that treatment. So I remember her doctor, one of her doctors that we're still really close, by the way, Dr. Falcon. She looked at me and she said, "Betsy, you remember that time when I first met you and you said to me, please just let me know if we ever get to that point where we're doing something to her and not for her, please let me know when we get to that point." And she's like, "We are at that point now, Betsy." When she said that, I said, "Okay, what do you think about CAR-Ts?" And she said, "Now that you mentioned that, I think it's good because we're not harming her. We didn't want anything that was going to harm her more, because if nothing was working anymore, why are we going to put her through that? We can't be selfish like that as parents. As much as we wanted her here with us, we couldn't put her through that. We couldn't do that to her." So when they said, CAR-T it's a possibility, because it's not going to harm her. Let's go, reach out to this hospital. So we ended up, Texas Children's ended up accepting her. They said they gave us the appointment for March 25th, 2019. And I remember it was a month from then, because it was when we came home, it was February 24th. And I was like, oh my goodness, a month from now, can they make it sooner? As a parent, you have all this, ideas going through your head and all these things going through your head, and you just want something fast and that's gonna help your child. So, but unfortunately, they couldn't take her in sooner. And they said, in the meantime, you guys keep coming to Methodist. we keep doing labs and just making sure that she's stable. We'll give her a dose of incretin, like a weekly dose of incretin, and just to keep the leukemia, stable and not going so high and so crazy. So we did that. Not even a week. I think it was already March. We decided to go to Corpus, because my husband, Ray, he had an appointment at Corpus. He's a vet, so he had an appointment over there, and a doctor's appointment. And he's like, you know what, since I'm already going over there, why don't you guys come with me? After my appointment, we can go to the beach, do something as a family for Bella. And I was like, you know what, sounds like an idea, let's go. We'll take out the kids from school early and we'll drive over there with you. And we did that. We went to pick up the boys from school. We took them and we drove to Corpus. I remember the whole way over there, Bella was crying and crying and crying. And I knew, you get to know your baby's cries. When they're crying, when they're just being spoiled and they just want something. When they're crying because they want that attention. When they're crying because they're in pain. The different cries. For me, it was like, okay, what's wrong? And I would tell her, the ugly part of it is that they can't say much. At this point, she was already 2. And she could say a few words, mommy, daddy, a few words, but not a full sentence. So she couldn't tell me when she was in pain, like in words. She would just use expressions. And I remember her crying, and she would touch her legs, and she would go owie, owie, and then she would touch her chin and go owie. So I thought that she had bit herself, and I would be checking her mouth, and I'm like, okay, you don't have anything in your mouth. I'm like, what's wrong? And I was like, okay, maybe she's just tired from the road, right? And we made so many stops that day, getting her favorite chips, her favorite drink, her food. She didn't want anything. And I was like, I don't know. I remember telling Ray, my husband, and I'm like, babe, I don't know what's wrong with her. So he's like, no, maybe she's just so frustrated from the ride. We get to Corpus. He goes into his appointment. Thankfully, he didn't take long. It was like an in and out process, and he was out pretty fast. When he was inside, I took her out from her car seat, and I'm like, let's just take her out so she could walk and just distress herself. And yeah, she stopped crying, and she was laughing with her brothers, and we were just there in the truck waiting. He comes back, and we're like, okay, it's time to go have fun. It's not gonna be boring ride anymore. And we ended up going to the aquarium in Corpus, and we actually have a few videos of her. She had so much fun watching those dolphins. You stay with all these memories, At that point when we were there, she was watching the animals. She was being Bella. She was being a child, You didn't think she was fighting this monster. And at that point, she was just being her. We had so much fun. We took her after the aquarium. We took her to the beach. She walked for a little bit. We were there. It was a little bit cold, but we still walked, we didn't get inside the water, but we just walked, and it was a really nice day. After a while, she started crying. She wanted daddy to carry her, and she was there, and we could see it in her face where she was already kind of tired, and we said, you know what, let's just go home. So we drove back to Laredo, because the next day she was going to have an appointment. So if not, we would have stayed in Corpus another day, but we had to drive to San Antonio the following day for for her scheduled, labs. And we came back to Laredo the following morning. We drive to San Antonio. We're at the clinic. They come back with the lab results, and they said, and I mentioned to them what had happened the day before, that she was already crying and just, pointing to places where it would hurt. And that day, I remember we were there, and the doctor said, "You know what, Betsy? I think it's the leukemia. It's already, affecting her in the way that she already has pain in her joints, in her bones, in her jaw." They gave her a dose of morphine, and she seemed better at that point, because they could see it there when we were at the clinic. They could see her, that she was in pain. So they told me, when they came back with the lab results, they told me they didn't look well. So she said, "We're gonna have to give her a 5-day chemotherapy to bring those cells." We saw a bunch of blasts in her bloodstream, so we're gonna give her this chemotherapy to bring those levels down. We already spoke, because at this point we're already getting ready to go to Texas Children's. So they said, we already spoke with the doctors over there. They said it was going to be fine. It's not going to interfere with the collection of cells, but you're going to have to stay inpatient from here till you guys go to Texas Children. I was like, okay, we'll do that. We stayed. We were there. This was March 8th. So we still had a couple of weeks to get to March 25th, when it was going to be the appointment for the collection for Texas Children's for that CAR T therapy treatment. We're at the hospital. She did her 5-day chemo. She seemed well. She, like I said, Bella was always a fierce, happy little girl. At this hospital, they have camps going on, since kids can't go to camp. They have this organization in San Antonio. They do that. I don't know if you heard of it, but it's they do this discovery camp where children that go through this battle, they go to camps for a full week. It's just specifically for these children. So since these children in the hospital can't do that, they started a program where they take camp to them. So Bella loved that. She loved getting out of her room. Anything that had to be out of her room, she would be there. So she was doing fine. She was there. We were just waiting for that day, for March 25th, and to get here. And I think it was a week before, March 18, when her labs come back. She had finished the 5-day. Her levels started going back up, her ANC and all this stuff. And again, doctors come back with the news. It was already like a record. They come back and they said, "Mom, her white counts are going back up, and she's recovering from the chemotherapy, but at the same time she's recovering, these leukemia cells are multiplying. We have to give her something, to get her to that CAR T." And they're like, "We don't know what to do. We're going to reach out to the doctors at Texas Children's and see if we could give her this," because they knew what chemotherapy to give her. They just didn't want to give her something that was going to interfere with the collection. So they called and they said, "You know what, this is what's going on with Bella. Can we give her this?" They said at Texas Children's, "You know what, just fly her over to us. Bring her already to us." This was a Tuesday morning when this happened. On Wednesday night, that's when they fly us over to Texas Children's. We get there, nothing knows anything. They're like, "Okay, what is she here for?" I'm like, "Well, you guys called. We came for the CAR T." And I didn't get to meet the doctors till the following day on Thursday evening, around 6 p.m. That's when I met the doctors. At this point, Bella was already in so much pain. They hadn't started any treatment, nothing. I just knew she was in so much pain. So I tell the doctor, you know what, what's gonna happen? What are you gonna give her? Like, she doesn't look fine. What's gonna happen? And that's when she said, we're gonna give her a high dose of methotrexate and we're gonna give her a dose of Vincristine. So I said, okay, when is that gonna happen? She's like, I already sent the prescription to the pharmacy. They're getting the chemotherapy ready, and it should be here by midnight. I was like, okay. I remember that night, Dad was already asleep, and Bella and I, we were watching a movie, and I tell her, you know what, baby, Mommy's gonna go shower, okay? You stay here watching the movie. If you need anything, just scream at Daddy. Will wake up. And she's like, okay, go. So I go get in the shower. By the time I come out, the movie was over, and she was just sitting there. Like, she was such a great little girl. She was just sitting there, like, all dark, just sitting in her bed, and she's like looking at me, and I'm like, oh, you're here by yourself, like, all in the dark. And then I get in bed with her. She's like, she always wanted someone with her, there sleeping with her. So I would sleep with her in the bed. I remember I jumped into the bed. We go to sleep, or we tried to go to sleep. And sure enough, after a couple of hours, she starts crying again, that pointing to her legs, to her jaw. Called the nurses and asked them for morphine. I noticed that there was no chemotherapy hand. I tell her, you know what, it's 3 a.m. When are you guys going to give her something? She's like, we're just waiting on pharmacy. That waiting took 3 more hours, 4 more hours. At 7 a.m, I wake up. We wake up, or we were kind of awake already throughout the night because Bella wasn't sleeping. I wake up and Bella's already crying. I could see it in her face. She was already super swollen. She didn't want to eat that morning. I call the nurse and I tell her, you know what, where's the chemotherapy? You guys said you were going to bring it at midnight. She's in pain. I don't know what to do here. And they're like, it's because we're just waiting for her pH levels to go up. She's at 6.5. We need her at 7 to start the chemotherapy. And I'm like, you didn't mention this yesterday. You could have said that, as a parent, you start getting so frustrated with all these things. And this was already Friday, the 25th. I think it was the 25th. No, I'm lying, not the 25th. It was the 20th or something like that, 22nd. And it was a Friday, and we're there. I'm arguing with the nurses, get her something, get the doctor here fast. As soon as she walks out, Bella starts coughing. When she coughs, she starts coughing blood. I tell my husband, you know what? At that point, I was like, I'm done. Let's just go home. Let's just go home. He's like, we're already here. We're here already, let's just wait and see what's going to happen. The doctor should be getting here soon. I'm like, okay. So we're there waiting, and I'm insisting on the doctors to come in, to come see her, to come see us, and to start a chemotherapy, start something. They didn't want to start the high dose methotrexate because that it could affect her kidneys if her pH level wasn't at 7. At that point, I said, I don't care. Just give it to her. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. If it affects her kidneys, we'll see what we do about it. Doctor said, just give her a dose of Vincristine. They started with that. I'm like, you could have started with that since last night, but okay. They're there. She said, I'm calling the ICU doctors just to check on her, trying to keep me calm. It's just to check on her, Mom. It's just, just to see that she's fine. If she needs to go up there, just so they can keep extra eyes on her, and this and that. She's explaining all these things to me, trying to keep me calm. because I was already going crazy seeing, you start, as a parent, you start freaking out seeing this coughing of blood, and your daughter just not being herself. And I tell them, okay, fine, check, look at her. And a whole bunch of doctors walk into the room, and they're checking her lungs and listening to her lungs. And I remember them saying her lungs sound great, they sound good, this and that. And they're over there in the corner talking to themselves, and they had called X-ray to do X-rays on the chest. And while they're over there, my husband and I are over here with Bella. One of the ICU nurses is here with us too, and she said, "You know what, Mom? I'm just gonna suction her so we can get that mucus or whatever she has here, because she sounded congested." So when she says that, she's like, "I'm just gonna need someone to hold her, one of you guys to hold her." At that point, I had her in my arms, but then the doctor called me, and she's like, "Mom, can you step over here?" So I told my husband, "Here, you grab her, you grab her, and they'll do that." And he's there with her, and I'm their bedside, just watching what they're doing, but at the same time listening to the doctor. And this is when everything just goes 360 from there. They're doing the suctioning, and all of a sudden you hear the machines go off, and I just hear my husband go, "Bella, Bella, wake up." I turn around and I look at her, and she looks just peacefully sleeping, but you could see her turning blue already. Everything happened so fast. At that point, luckily the doctors were already there, the ICU doctors, so they called the cold blue. They start chest compressions. At that point, I dropped to my knees. And I just say, "God, please." I accept it, I accept it. And I said, "God, please, if it's your will to take her, take her. But please, I pray that you leave her here with us more time. This is not the way she's supposed to leave. But if you're gonna keep her here, please make this go away. She's gonna be restored. She's gonna be fine. This cancer is not gonna be in her body. But I will accept your will." I remember my husband saying, "This is not it. This is not the way. This is not the way." It was 2 minutes for them to revive her. But those were the longest 2 minutes of my life. 2 minutes, they brought her back. They sent her straight to ICU, and they start all this, all these treatments, and she's connected to all these wires, and they start this, I think it's called for paraphrase. I can't pronounce it, but it's kind of like a dialysis where they take out her blood to, clean her blood and just infuse it back in, and just to bring those white counts down. Right away, I think they start her on steroids, and everything just happened so fast. We were there for that happened. We were there for not even 2 nights when she coded. They brought her back. We were in ICU. She was there for 2 more weeks. They finally do the CAR-T, the collection of cells, and they told us that it was another Friday when they tell us that she didn't make she didn't make counts. She didn't make the cells, enough cells for the treatment. So that's when they told us, that that's it. They had told us, I remember they had mentioned if there was another treatment, if we wanted to go with it, but we said, as hard as it sounds, and as much as we wanted her here, we couldn't do more for her. We couldn't put her through that. Like I said, we wanted to do things for her, not to her. So at that point, you take the hardest decision, right, a parent could make. And we said, we just want to go home. So I remember Methodist, we were at Houston. We're 8 hours away from home. So it's hard for family members to go, it's 8 hours drive. So it was hard for family members to go, for our children to go. So Methodist children said, you know what? We didn't want her. We already knew she was going to pass. We just didn't want her to pass in Houston. And we wanted to be closer to home, closer to family. And Methodist was family. So they said, we'll fly her over. Insurance will not cover it, but do not worry about it. They spoke, like I said, her doctors at Methodist, they are amazing, amazing doctors. They loved Bella so, so much. Her nurses, everyone. They did everything to bring her back to Methodist. We didn't have to worry about the cost. They covered it. And they flew her back to Methodist. It was a Sunday night, already Monday. That Monday morning, they sit us down, they talked to us. And at this point, she was already, in the ventilator and high sedation. She was sedated, not awake anymore. They sit us down and they tell us, this is what's going on. What is it that you guys want to do? At that point, I was selfish. I said, I want her to wake up. I wanted her to wake up because I wanted to see her eyes again. I wanted to talk to her. I wanted for her brothers to say goodbye. But then my husband talked some sense into me and he said, you know what, babe, we can't do this to Bella. She's already in a lot of pain. It's not going to be her. We talked about it, and the following day, that's when they come in and they said, what do you want to do? The only thing, her organs started failing, and it was her lungs had collapsed already. She was hooked to the ventilator, and that's when we said, we'll disconnect her today. And they said, okay, call your family members. We'll do it at 3 p.m. It's going to be fast. It won't take long. And we called our family members. We were in the ICU, but they said, we'll bring her down to the 4th floor, which is the oncology floor, so she could be surrounded by her nurses and her doctors and family. We did that. We were in the room and they disconnected her. And she fought to her very last breath. At around 5 p.m., that's when she took her last breath and she gained her wings. And now she's in heaven, rejoicing next to our Lord. And this was April 9th of 2019.
Change our course with the wind.
And this was her journey, of this brave, strong, courageous little girl, full of life. That was our daughter. And, because of the same reason, because of what we went through, what she went through, what we went through as a family, is the reason why we now spread awareness for these little kids, for these warriors, for these children, because it's not only Bella, it's not only Mia, it's all these other little children that are going through it, and that families are going through it and will go through it, that we spread the awareness that these children deserve more than 4%. They deserve way more. And because it's not trending, or it's not a trend, people don't notice it, or they're not out there, following that trend. But we're here as parents of warrior parents. We're here to spread that awareness, to be their voice. So I thank you, Joel. Thank you so much for letting me be part of this amazing channel where we could share our little warriors' stories.
I had to put myself on mute. I just couldn't. It just angers me so much. 4%. It brings anger to me that these doctors are saying we don't know what to do. We're out of options. That isn't right. That isn't. Not for our children, not for these other kids that are fighting. And I told you, and I've told Ray before, I doing this channel, I'm doing it, and as I mentioned, if I die in the process of bringing awareness, I'm gonna do it, because I'm gonna fight until my very last breath, because these kids have fought until their very last breath, and they still have a voice. So you and Ray and what you all have been doing, it's brought a lot of, it's inspired me so much, and I can tell behind your smiles, both of you, the brokenness. All these parents that post a picture or you see smiling, it's a broken, shattered heart behind that fake smile. Because at times, most of the times, and not all the times, it is a fake smile that we have to do. But we're going to do it, and we're going to continue to do it. Now, I know that I'm just extremely admired by both of your faiths. And hearing Bella's story reminds me so much of Mia's story. I remember pulling Surasi, Mia's mom, into a room and saying, we're going to do the hardest prayer that as parents would have to do. And I remember that day in the little room, I took her by the hand and I said, God, this is it. We're tired. And if it is your will to take her, she was never our daughter. You lend her to us. She's your daughter. And if you need to take her back now, then we just want to thank you for these almost 3 years that you let her, enjoy her. And Mia's mom said something that still hits home, and it hits any parent. She says, we cannot play tug of war with God. He's going to win every single time. And if it's his will to do things, he's going to do it. He chose us. And this is something that it took me so long, Betsy, for me to do, to create this channel, because I was in depression. I had anger. I grew up being a youth pastor. So I always thought prayers and faith and all this was going to turned out to be something else. But then I had an eye-opening experience when I found out that the miracle did happen, because our daughters are healed. The miracle did happen, and the healing did happen. Maybe not in the way we wanted it to, but the healing and the miracles happen. So
Yes.
we have to be grateful for that, and we have to. Now it's our job to spread awareness. And I thank you and Ray for what you all are doing in your community. And every time you guys post something, it hits home. It hits home a lot. And I know you've reached out to Mia's mom, and I thank you for that. And I know, just quickly, I know you guys have created a foundation and are helping. So if you could just talk to us, I'm glad, and gracias a Dios, I thank God that, every week this channel grows and it's hitting literally all over the world. I get messages. So just if you talk to us about your foundation, what you're doing. And again, at this point, I'm not bad mouthing anything. I'm not bad mouthing anyone or any certain hospital, but we got to be careful where we actually spend our money and what we're donating to. That's why I
Yes.
wanted to create this, because these are us. These are parents that have gone through it. So anything
Yes.
that goes to your foundation, you know exactly where it's going. We're not paying CEO
Yes.
salaries. We're not paying, all these other things. We're not paying for a new parking lot in a hospital. No, these are going
Yes.
for the children. So Betsy, you could just talk to us, about your foundation, what you're doing, and all these. You're gonna send me all the links, and I'm gonna put up all the links and tag you and do all that. But talk to us about Dallas Foundation.
Yes. Thank you so much. And you're absolutely right. And I have to agree 100% with you. And one of the many reasons why we created this nonprofit organization, mainly, we did it in honor and memory of our daughter, Bella Serena Sanchez. And we did it to help these families. We know the heartache that a family goes through, not only through the journey and the fighting this monster, but the financial side of it. you know like I said, and I mentioned it, um bills don't stop. Always one parent has to stay behind, or if two are there, luck luckily we had a great support system, and a lot of times dad could spend time with us and be up there with us, and be part of the journey as well. But a lot of times he had to stay back home. And now we created this nonprofit. We are actually a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We help our It's called Smiles from Heaven. We helped local families and hoping and praying to expand soon. But for now, we're helping the, you know, South Texas. And the way we help these families is we have free transportation for families. We saw that a lot. You get to meet a lot of parents, a lot of families in these hospitals, and you share your stories, right? And you get comfortable, and you talk about, the financial situation, about different organizations that are helping these families. And we saw it through the time that we were in the hospital, and we decided to do this. And one of our programs is Bella's Hope, right? Is the one that we provide free of charge transportation for families to get to their treatment facilities. Unfortunately, here in Laredo, we don't have a children's hospital. So every family that goes through this, they have to travel either to Corpus, to San Antonio, to Houston, all the way to Dallas. So they have to travel a lot, to get to their treatment. And we provide that. We provide a transportation free of charge for the family, for a parent and the child. The first ride, we give them with a care package, is a luggage with a blanket, a pillow, for them to be comfortable on the ride. We also provide another program, is it's we do fuel carts. We provide fuel carts and meal carts if the parent does have a way of transport, but the financial means not as much. They can request fuel carts and meal carts, and we'll provide that for them, because we saw that as well a lot. We went through it. We had vehicles, but unfortunately both of our vehicles through our journey, something always happens. And with only one parent working, and bills and home mortgage payment and all this stuff, it all accumulates. And we saw that as well. And when we would see, when we were impatient, and we would see other organizations get there with fuel cards, with meal cards, it was a big help for us. It was a big, you just feel so thankful that someone remembers someone remembers of that family that's going through that. They don't forget. Someone out there is thinking of all these families and all these little ones, and just find means to help. So that's another program. The other two programs that we have, it's unfortunately with this whole COVID thing, we had to stop it for now, but we're trying to figure out ways of how we could do it virtually. But one of them is the two programs are support groups. One is specifically for bereaved parents that have lost to childhood cancer. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I'm just wondering because my AirPods died. But yes, one of the other programs is for bereaved parents, and we actually did have one session before this whole COVID hit us, but we gathered together with other parents that have lost a child, to childhood cancer, and we just share our stories. We talk about it. We talk about, our issues, how we feel, what angers us, just a way to express ourselves. Yes, we are faithful children of God, and we have our faith. This is what keeps us going, keeps us strong and keep us going through all of this. We're passing through this life. So while we're here, we want to do as much as we can, if it's God's will and if it's in God's hands, and it's our way of saying thank you, we will continue to do it. So we just do art, and we paint, and we gather together, and that's what we do with that program. With the other program, it's also a support group. Unfortunately, we didn't have a chance to start it, because one thing is we just became a nonprofit organization. So Bella passed away April 9 of 2019. In July, we started the process of it, all the paperwork, all the legal things. And by October of 2019, was it? Yes. Mm-hmm. No, I'm already confused. By October, October 2019, we became a non-profit organization. So it was April, May, June, July, August, September, October, 6 months after Bella's passing. That's when we officially became a non-profit. And then COVID happened in March. So we really didn't have a lot of time to, to set up these meetings and to do this. But right now with this COVID, what we are doing is providing the transportation. And one thing that's requested a lot is the meal cards and the fuel cards. And I mean, that's the way we help out. And more than anything, spreading awareness, doing events, September, Go Gold, Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. So we do events to spread awareness.
That's so awesome. So thank you for doing that. And so again, to everybody out there, I'm going to be, Betsy's going to be sending me all the links to all these organizations, as well as Bella's Facebook page, Bella Strong. Go in there, like the page, and follow the journey, and follow all these things that they're doing for the community. So if you're in the Valley of Texas or anywhere around the world, if you want to help out, like I said, I'm going to be putting all these links in the description when I do the intro video. They're all going to be on there. I'm going to be tagging Ray and Betsy and everything that I post. And like I say every week, if you want to even reach out to them, talk to them, ask them questions, they'll be more than happy to to listen to hear you out. So all these organizations, everything that they're doing right now, and I admire them for everything that they're doing. All those links are going to be in the description, so please make sure to check it out. And even if you can't, I mean, prayer, if you pray for these organizations, if you can't donate $1, if you could just say a prayer for these organizations, for all the other organizations, but if you could just pray for what we're doing, because it really does take a lot out of us to be able to do this. So I'm sure Betsy Ray will really appreciate your prayers.
Yeah.
So right before we finish this, Betsy, any last words, anything that you could tell us, anything you could tell other parents?
Yes, no. First of all, like I said, thank you. I can't thank you enough for letting me be part of this. It's it's been a while that I talked about, it's hard. It's hard to recall and to gather all these memories and talk about, the stories, but we, as far as I know, a lot of parents, we like to talk about our children. They were part of us. They are part of us. They're a part of this world. So don't be afraid to ask us about our child, because she is alive. My Bella is alive. She's rejoicing. She's healed. She's happy. And something for the parents out there that are going through this: don't don't be afraid. Hold yourself from God's hand, and keep going and keep pushing. And for the parents that have lost a child, know that I understand your pain. I cannot say and I cannot tell you time will heal, because for us it doesn't, but we will get that healing, once we are gathered, once we go home. In the meantime, it's a fight every day. It is a fight every day, but we keep pushing. We keep pushing because we are here for a purpose. God chose us for a purpose, and our purpose could be just spreading awareness. Our purpose could be being there for other families that are going through it or that went through it. So my heart is with you all. My prayers are with you all. And anything, if it's just a chat, something, reach out. I can be there. I will be there. And just like I said, my love and my prayers are with you all, and I understand this, and we are in this together. Remember that we're just passing through this life. This is not our home. We will go home and we will see our children again. And thank you, thank you, thank you. For September, I do encourage everyone all over the world, wherever you are, go gold. Help us be a voice for these children. Help us get this 4% higher. It's not enough. It's not enough. Nothing is enough for these children that are going through it. So go gold. Follow our page, Bella Strong. We do have a website. The link will be posted. And just, if you can't, if you, for any reason you can't, financially, just by sharing and spreading the word, you are doing a big change in this world. A big change. So thank you all. Thank you for your support. Thank you, Juan, for having me here. Thank you for letting me share, Bella's journey. Took so long, but thank you. I feel like it's well worth it.
It is, and our daughters deserved it, and all these kids deserve to be talked about. So, Betsy, once
Yes.
again, thank you so much. I had the opportunity to follow her journey, but hearing it firsthand from you, it just takes on a whole new level. So, thank you so much for doing that, and thank you for what you're doing to spread awareness for our kids, for our children. And thank you to everybody who took the time to watch this episode of the Gold Corner. Again, we talk about these things because we've gone through these things, and a lot of the times people will say, well, God doesn't give you more than you can handle, but a lot of the times things do happen, and sometimes things will happen to you more than you can handle, because God wants you to get on your knees and he wants you to cry out to him and say, God, I can't do it anymore. I need your help. That's when I need for you to come in. That's when you need to let go of everything and let God take over, and let his will be done. It's going to be done regardless. So
Yes.
it's better for us to just go with it. I know I've had people tell me that they hate God. I've had people tell me all these things, but you know what? God is good and God is faithful. And if we remain faithful, we will see our children again. Just as Betsy was mentioning, this is not our home. We're just passing by here. We will be home one day and we will be with our children and we will be pain free. We will be healed, as she mentioned. So I urge you to just take some time and pray. Again, all these links are going to be in the description. I'm going to be tagging Betsy. Please follow the page. I can guarantee you, once you see the smile of this little girl, um, it's going to really change your mentality on a lot of things. So once again, thank you all so much for visiting this episode. It was an awesome way to kick off the first week of childhood cancer. And please go gold wherever you go. And as I always mention, live each day to its fullest, because tomorrow is not promised. You need to always be thankful for what God has given you, and just pray, and make sure that you pray for your family, for your children, and for our nation. So thank you all once again, and we'll see you all next week. God bless you. Remember to go gold.
God bless.
Bye.